In the endless flow of life, human beings always carry within themselves a profound question. What is the meaning of life when death is inevitable? Thousands of years ago, Gautama Buddha looked directly at this question and discovered a wisdom that could free people from their greatest fear, the fear of birth and death. Instead of seeing death as a tragic ending, the philosophy of Buddhism views life as a journey of understanding, awakening, and inner transformation. The video, The Buddhist View on Life and Death, on the Buddha's Wisdom Journey channel, will guide listeners into a deep and tranquil perspective on the nature of existence. According to Buddhist wisdom, birth and death are not two frightening opposites, but merely waves in the ocean of impermanence. When people understand this law, fear gradually dissolves, giving way to peace and a profound compassion for life. Through simple yet profound reflections, the video will help viewers explore how Buddhist wisdom illuminates humanity's greatest questions: why we are born, why we die, and how to live a meaningful life knowing that everything is constantly changing. This is not only a philosophical topic, but also a journey of awakening that helps people live more fully in every present moment. Since human beings first became aware of their own existence, a silent question has always appeared in the mind. What is the true meaning of life when all of us must eventually face death? No one teaches us to think about it, yet it's a moment in life when we see a loved one pass away, when we witness the passage of time on our own bodies, or when we sit quietly through a very long night, the question suddenly becomes clearer than ever before. People may chase success, money, fame, or temporary pleasures, but deep inside, the concern about birth and death still exists, like a quiet current flowing through the mind. Most of us are taught how to live, but we are rarely taught how to understand death. Because of this, when we think about death, the mind often reacts with fear. We fear losing the things we love, fear being separated from the people we cherish, and fear the disappearance of our own selves. But if we look more deeply, we may realize that this fear does not truly come from death itself, but from the lack of understanding about the nature of life. More than 2,000 years ago, Gautama Buddha faced this question directly. He did not search for answers in blind belief or metaphysical speculation. Instead, he observed life with deep awareness. He saw birth, aging, illness, and death not as isolated tragedies of human beings, but as natural laws of existence. From that observation, the wisdom of Buddhism was born, opening a completely different way of seeing life and death. From the Buddhist perspective, life and death are not two separate points. They are like two breaths within the same flow. Every moment of life is being born and also fading away. A thought appears and disappears. An emotion comes and goes. A day begins and ends. If we observe carefully, we can see that arising and passing away are happening in every second of life. Therefore, death is not something entirely unfamiliar. It is simply the continuation of a law we have always been experiencing. Yet what causes human suffering is not this law, but the attachment of the mind. We want everything to last forever. We want youth to never fade. We want the people we love to always remain beside us. And we want good things to continue endlessly. But life moves in a different way. Everything changes, everything moves, and nothing can remain the same forever. When the mind tries to resist this truth, suffering begins to arise. Buddhism does not teach people to become pessimistic about death. On the contrary, Buddhist wisdom helps people see that it is precisely because life is impermanent that each moment becomes precious. If everything lasted forever, perhaps we would never truly appreciate it. But because time passes, because everything changes, a peaceful morning, a sincere smile, or a quiet moment within the heart becomes deeply meaningful. When people understand the nature of birth and death, they begin to live in a very different way. Instead of chasing after fleeting things, they start returning to awareness in the present moment. Instead of fearing death, they learn how to live more fully. Because when we understand that life is impermanent, we no longer waste time on meaningless conflicts, prolonged anger, or unnecessary worries. In fact, most human suffering does not come from death in the future, but from the way we live in the present. The mind is constantly pulled toward the past and the future. We regret what has already passed or worrying about what has not yet arrived. Meanwhile, the present moment, the place where life is truly happening, is often forgotten. For this reason, Buddhist wisdom does not only speak about death as an ending, but also about the art of living with awareness. When people understand that life is fragile and impermanent, they begin to slow down. They listen more deeply. They look at life with gentler eyes, and within that stillness, a very different kind of peace begins to appear, a peace that does not depend on circumstances and is not shaken by the changes of the outside world. Strangely, when people truly understand death, they begin to love life even more, not with attachment or fear of loss, but with a deep sense of appreciation. They understand that every day they wake up is a gift. Every breath that continues to arise is a simple miracle of existence. Therefore, when speaking about death in Buddhism, it is not a dark or frightening subject. On the contrary, it is a doorway to wisdom. When we look directly at the truth of birth and death, human beings begin to awaken from the illusions of the mind. They begin to understand that life is not something to grasp, but a flowing process to experience and understand. On this journey, the question is no longer how to avoid death, but becomes how to live a truly awakened life before death arrives. And when that question appears in the mind, a new path begins to open, the path of understanding, compassion, and inner freedom. That is the path that Buddhist wisdom has pointed to for thousands of years. And when we begin to listen more deeply, perhaps we will realize that the answer to humanity's greatest fear does not lie in extending life endlessly, but in truly understanding the nature of life in this very moment. When we begin to look more deeply into how Buddhism understands life and death, we realize that the essence does not lie in explaining what happens after death, but in understanding the nature of existence while we are still alive. For Buddhism, the greatest question is not what awaits us on the other side of death, but why human beings suffer when facing birth and death. From a deep observation of life, Gautama Buddha realized a truth that is very simple yet profoundly deep. Everything in the universe is constantly changing. Nothing exists forever in the same state. The things we once believed to be solid and lasting also gradually transform with time. This change is not a mistake of life. It is the very nature of life. Buddhism calls this law impermanence. When we understand impermanence, we begin to see that birth and death are simply two natural expressions of the same flow. Like a wave rising on the surface of the ocean and dissolving back into the sea, life also appears and transforms according to its conditions. But why are human beings so afraid of death? The answer lies in the attachment of the mind. The mind always wants to hold on to what is pleasant and avoid what is unwanted. We want youth to last, we want health to remain with us, and we want the people we love to never leave. When reality does not follow these wishes, the mind begins to produce anxiety and fear. What is interesting is that this fear does not only appear and death actually approaches, it quietly exists in everyday life. When we worry about the future, when we fear losing a relationship, when we suffer because of the changes of life, all of these come from the same root: attachment to things that can never be kept forever. Buddhist wisdom does not advise people to abandon life or become cold toward loss. On the contrary, it teaches people to look at life with deeper understanding. When we understand that everything is impermanent, we no longer try to hold on to things with desperation. Instead, we learn to appreciate them while they are present. A flower blooms beautifully precisely because it does not last forever. If that flower never faded, perhaps we would never stop to truly look at it. In the same way, it is the fragility of life that makes each moment precious. When people truly understand this, the way they live begins to change. They are no longer swept away by endless ambitions. They no longer waste too much energy on small conflicts. Instead, they begin to pay more attention to the quality of each moment that is unfolding. A simple meal becomes more meaningful when we are truly present to enjoy it. A conversation with a loved one becomes deeper when we listen with our full presence. A quiet morning can also become a rare moment of peace in a world that is constantly moving. In the light of Buddhist wisdom, death is no longer a frightening enemy. It becomes a natural part of the cycle of existence. Just as sunset is not the enemy of sunrise, death is not the enemy of life. They are simply two rhythms of the same music. What truly matters is not how long life lasts, but how we live during the time we have. A long life filled with ignorance and attachment can bring much suffering, but a life lived with awareness, compassion, and understanding can carry deep meaning, even if it does not last very long. When people begin to live with that awareness, the fear of death gradually decreases, not because they are certain about what will happen after death, but because they no longer feel that they have missed life. They know that they have truly lived, truly been present, and truly understood the value of each moment. An awakened mind does not wait for happiness at some distant point in the future. It finds peace in the present moment. And when the present is lived fully, death no longer carries the meaning of total loss. It is simply the natural closing of a journey. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the Buddhist view of life and death is that it does not try to create illusions to soothe human fear. Instead, it invites people to look directly at the truth of life with a calm and clear mind. When this happens, a very deep freedom begins to appear. It is the freedom from fear of the future, the freedom from attachment to things that cannot be kept. And most importantly, it is the freedom to live a complete life within the very moment that is unfolding. When we understand this, we begin to realize that birth and death are not two separate doors, but simply two parts of the same journey of existence. And when that journey is illuminated by wisdom and awareness, every step in life, whether short or long, becomes part of a profound awakening. When human beings reflect more deeply on life and death, one thing gradually becomes clear: our greatest fear does not truly come from death, but from the fact that we have not truly understood life. We often live hurriedly, chasing goals that never end, busy accumulating things that one day we will have to let go of. And in that busyness, many people forget that the time of a human life is limited. Yet that very limitation carries a profound meaning. If life lasted forever, perhaps we would never feel the value of each day. If everything existed eternally, perhaps we would never learn to appreciate the simple things that are present in our lives. It is precisely because everything changes, because each moment passes and can never return, that life becomes an incredibly precious gift. That is why the wisdom of Buddhism does not view death as something frightening, but as a gentle yet profound reminder of how we are living. Death reminds us that time is limited. It reminds us that the things truly important in life are not fame, power, or material accumulation, but peace within the mind, compassion toward others, and awareness in each moment. More than 2,000 years ago, Gautama Buddha saw this truth very clearly. He realized that human beings suffer not because life contains birth and death, but because we constantly try to resist the natural law of change. We want everything to last forever, but life moves according to a different rhythm. When the mind cannot accept this, suffering begins to arise. But when people begin to understand and accept the impermanence of life, a very deep freedom begins to open. We no longer feel trapped in fear of the future. We no longer worrying so much about having to hold on to everything. Instead, we learn to live more gently, more mindfully, and with greater appreciation. A peaceful morning can become a profound experience when we are truly present to feel it. A simple conversation with a loved one can become a meaningful moment when we listen with our whole heart. A slow step in silence can also become a journey of awareness. When we live in that way, life is no longer a series of days that we must get through. It becomes a journey to experience, to learn, and to grow in wisdom. And strangely, when people truly live so fully, the fear of death gradually dissolves. Not because death no longer exists. It is still there as a natural part of life. But when we have lived with understanding and awareness, death no longer carries the meaning of total loss. It is simply like a door closing after a journey that has been fully lived. Perhaps the most important reminder that Buddhist wisdom offers us is not that we must think too much about death, but that we should learn to live deeply starting right now. Because every day we are still breathing, still able to feel life, is already an opportunity to awaken, an opportunity to let go of unnecessary burdens in the mind, an opportunity to forgive old wounds, an opportunity to expand compassion toward the world around us. And when a person begins to live in that way, their life, whether long or short, becomes deeply meaningful. If the reflections in this video make you pause for a moment to look more deeply into your own life, then that is already a very important first step on the journey of awakening. Because sometimes just a single moment of stillness is enough to open an entirely new way of seeing life. If you feel that these reflections bring peace, contemplation, or a deeper perspective on life and death, take a moment to leave a comment below. Sharing your thoughts not only enriches this conversation, but may also bring awakening to others who are listening. And if you would like to continue exploring the profound wisdom of Buddhism about life, about suffering, about inner peace, and about the path of awakening, please subscribe to the Buddha's Wisdom Journey channel. Each video on this channel is a gentle journey of reflection, where we return together to the stillness of the mind and the ancient wisdom that has illuminated human life for thousands of years, because sometimes just one right insight can change the way we see our entire life, and when our way of seeing changes, our inner world also begins to change. Life may still continue with its familiar ups and downs. Time may still pass as it has always passed. But within, a deep and quiet peace can begin to grow. And from that peace, we can walk through all the changes of life, even birth and death, with a steady, gentle, and awakened heart. Before closing this journey of reflection, perhaps the most beautiful thing each of us can offer one another is not complicated explanations about life, but a sincere wish that comes from the quietness of the heart. May all those who are listening, wherever you may be in this world, whether you are going through peaceful days or facing difficult challenges in life, always find a sky of peace within your soul, because sometimes in a world full of constant change, what people need most is not to have more things, but to have peace within their own minds. May you have enough stillness to understand yourself, enough patience to move through the difficult stages of life, and enough clarity to realize that true happiness does not lie in distant grand things, but often hides within very simple moments. It may be a peaceful morning when you wake up and realize that you still have a new day to live. It may be a sincere smile, a kind word, or a moment when you feel your heart a little lighter than it was yesterday. May each of us learn how to slow down in the hurried flow of the modern world. Learn to listen more, understand more, and love more, because sometimes just a little compassion and ease a great deal of suffering in another person's life. May your family be at peace. May the people you love always be healthy and happy. May the hearts of every human being on this planet gradually become lighter, less angry, and filled with greater understanding. In the spirit of Buddhism, peace is not something distant. It does not come from the world becoming perfect, but from our minds learning how to live in harmony with life. When one person finds peace within themselves, that peace spreads outward around them, like the light of a small lamp that can dispel the darkness of an entire room. Therefore, may each of us become such a small source of light. There is no need to do anything extraordinarily great. Simply by living with awareness, kindness, and sincerity, we already help make this world a gentler place. May those who are tired rediscover hope. May those who are anxious rediscover stillness. May those who are suffering rediscover the path that leads to inner peace. And on the impermanent journey of life, may all of us, though we meet each other only in the brief moments of this lifetime, move together toward something very simple yet profoundly meaningful, living a life that is awakened, kind, and full of meaning. I would like to send to you, to your family, and to everyone in this world a sincere wish. May your heart always be at peace. May you always find the light of wisdom in difficult times. May your life be filled with understanding, compassion, and happiness. And may it be that wherever we are in this world, all of us can move together toward a world that is gentler, more peaceful, and filled with more humanity.